Salut YouTube! Welcome back to the Not Even French YouTube channel, which is the place on the interwebs for a bit of French language, French culture, New Zealand life and culture too, and everything in between. So in today's video we are tackling the topic about why I still speak English with my French husband. And Niels and I have always spoken English together. We do not speak French at home. And it's really funny because as soon as you arrive in France or you start dating a French person, the first thing that comes out of anyone's mouth is, it's the best way to learn. You have to speak to your partner in French to be able to learn French. You should get a French boyfriend just to learn the language. You've got a live-in tutor at home. Make sure you tell him to only speak to you in French, and so on and so forth. And I'm gonna explain to you why this has never worked for us. And honestly, if only it were that simple. If only. I think this is going to be a really relatable video for anyone that's been in a bicultural relationship where you've had to navigate the decision of which language do you speak or how are you going to split up each other's native languages. I did want to preface this video though with saying that I have tried. I really have tried. We've tried to make this switch a few times and it just hasn't worked out for us, including when we moved to New Zealand. I was like, okay, when we move to New Zealand and we're going to be immersed in an English-speaking environment again, we're going to speak French at home. And it still didn't work. And for some reason in general, and especially in the expat community, there's a lot of guilt and shame I feel around this, around not using your partner to be able to learn their language faster. So let's dive into all of that. Now, before we do, I just want to mention that there are two ways that we are exposed to French in our household. The first is with Bonbon. We do speak French to Bonbon. She's just asleep right here on her bed. I don't know if you can see her though because she's grey and so is her bed. And the second way is when we're absorbing French television, French series and all of that good stuff. And one of the best investments I've ever made into keeping my language levels nice and high has been a VPN, and specifically NordVPN. So NordVPN is really awesome because it's actually a tool that allows your computer to think that it's anywhere in the world that you want it to. So even though I'm based in New Zealand, if I want to consume French media, if I want to watch local French news, local French TV, the replays of French movies from the major network sites over there, I can. It's as if I'm a local. Not only that, but it protects your privacy and data too. So if you're traveling and you're on public Wi-Fi for some reason, your computer will be nice and protected. And what's great about it is it's just so easy to use. I have it personally as a browser extension. One click, boom, I'm in France suddenly, or I'm in the UK, or I'm in the US. And because they have over 5,200 servers in 60 countries, NordVPN is actually the fastest VPN out there, so there's never any lag or delay. You can also share the love because you can share your NordVPN account across 6 different devices and they're on every major platform. So if you want to consume media from anywhere you want in the world, click my link below because there's an amazing deal that NordVPN is offering to the people watching this video. You can sign up to a 2-year plan with an extra month for free at a massive discount. Like I'm talking 70% off. And of course it's risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. And without further ado, let's jump in to the first point. So this may sound obvious, but Niels and I met in English. We met while he was over here in New Zealand and we were together for 18 months before I moved to France. So our whole world developed in an English-speaking environment because he was in New Zealand and then he went to New York. I went to visit him in New York. And at that time, I didn't really have anything more than a curiosity to learn French. I knew that it would be useful, but it wasn't a need, okay? And this is important to note about me, is that I wasn't necessarily a Francophile. I wasn't into French language and culture. I didn't study it. I never particularly gravitated towards languages and culture and history. I'm very much a science, math, and psychology girl. And so it just wasn't really on my radar. What this means is that we spent those first 18 months together in English is that our history is in English, our jokes are in English, our nicknames are in English. A lot of our foundational communication is in English. And this is really interesting, but studies have actually shown that you have different personalities in your different languages. And it's so true because language is so much more than the words you use. It's the way thoughts formulate in your mind. There are cultural undertones, things you say, things you don't say, the ways you approach different kinds of topics. And so it really does help to frame a new outlook and perspective and even personality in different languages. I know that in French, Niels is very witty and pun-based in terms of his sense of humor. Now, when he was up and coming in English, he needed to adapt and he needed to find different ways. And so the sense of humor that I know of him, for example, is different. And while I I love learning about NIELS from both perspectives, of course. I've got like a lifetime of learning to be able to do with this one person. I have to admit, it does feel strange speaking to him in anything other than English when we're alone. Another big point here is that when I moved to France, it was a period of such intense change for me. I can't tell you how naive I was about how big of a shift it would be. And in that process, in moving to a country that I'd never visited before and didn't know the language, and starting a master's degree and meeting new people and letting go of my country, my friends and my family and all of this stuff, English was a safe space for me. It was like I'd go out into this big wide world with a foreign language and feel very lost and very confronted and very challenged all the time. And being able to come home and speak English, it felt safe, it felt easy, especially after a long day. And yes, I studied in English, but a long day with every break interacting in French and feeling constantly guilty for not speaking French and feeling constantly embarrassed about my French. It was just a bit of a relief. And that's why I think it did form a little bit of a habit there in English being at home. It also took me longer to become fluent in French, and so the habit went on for longer and got even more deeply embedded, and it took me a very, very long time to feel myself in French. Even now I struggle, even now I'm not as witty or quick as I'd like to be. So it's interesting, it's like I could finally come home and be myself to my full extent. I could actually be smart, be funny, be provocative. I could be those things that are very advanced in terms of communication levels. The second point is that NIELS is not my French professor. He's simply not. He's my husband. And he doesn't necessarily have the desire or the capability to be a good professor. So whenever we'd be trying and he'd be like, that's wrong, and sort of pointing that out, I'd get frustrated. But then equally, if I was making mistakes and he didn't tell me, I'd get frustrated. He's not a neutral external person. And I don't necessarily want to be putting that pressure on him as well. Like, yes, I want to get better in French, but that's not actually on him. That's not his responsibility to carry. I don't actually want to be his student. I don't want to have that dynamic in our household. And at the beginning, when you're learning French, it takes so much longer than you think it will. I don't want to subject my husband to speaking with like a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old for months at a time at home. Yes, of course, long term I would have sped up faster. But in the meantime, oh my gosh, having to say like it was warm today and the sky was blue, like that being my only chat, I would find that really, really tough. It's one of those things that also requires a lot of patience. It's like learning how to drive. You know, you often don't learn to drive with one of your parents or your partner or whatever that looks like, because it does require a lot of patience. You can't seem to grasp like simple concepts up front when you're learning, and the other person gets stressed out, scared for their life, and just like doesn't really want to be there. Sometimes it can feel like that depending on the person you are in a relationship with as well. Like it can be frustrating for them too. And also I think as well, after a long day, as I said, of being out and about, doing my studies, doing my job, trying to navigate that meeting in French, trying to do that presentation in French, all of those kinds of things, being able to come home and not be in student mode and not being like, oh, you made that mistake, but just being able to kind of like relax after making the effort in the outside world, I guess, with NIELS. That became my preference because I just wanted to focus on enjoying our time together, not on making more effort into the language acquisition. The next point is sort of missing a big purpose or a big why with learning the language, because the effort you have to put in to master a language like French is immense. And so there's got to be a why, there's got to be a pull, there's got to be a motivator to really master that language if you want to stick to it. For me, as I said before, I was never a major Francophile. It wasn't out of the love of learning, it wasn't out of the curiosity, it wasn't out of the problem solving. I can see how that would be enjoyable. I prefer learning about business and careers and human psychology, and I love learning about neuroscience and things like that. I'm just putting it out there honestly. I wasn't obsessed with the language. I wasn't in love with learning the language. I love the language, but the process of learning it wasn't a passion for me. And I've also gotten to a point where I can watch my French series. I can listen to business podcasts in French, which I enjoy. I can chat to his friends and family. I make a lot of mistakes, really, still. However, I'm good. I don't actually need to work in French because I work for myself now and my work will be in English. And so what's the big driver for spending hours per week dedicated to speaking and learning French. I can't see myself ever having to write poetry in French or wanting to, or wanting to write journal articles in French and all of that kind of stuff. So again, it's sort of like once you've hit a certain level, I don't necessarily have that huge motivation to be like, okay, we're going to switch our household into French and we're going to speak in French uniquely just so I can improve. That driver really isn't there. And it also comes back to, I guess, like having that upper hand in communication in the household, to be honest. Like, I like to be able to express exactly what's on my mind and to be able to very much get my point across. And also communication is very important to me. It's one of my strengths. It's something that I do well. I've always been a good writer, communicator, and it's something that I really enjoy. And so I don't want that sort of taken away from me. The next point is simply that NIELS wants to master English. He has always been fascinated by the English language. He did an exchange over to the UK while he was growing up. He's lived in Sweden. I know they speak Swedish there obviously, but he was studying in English and most people are speaking English around him with English TV and whatnot in Sweden. And then he came to New Zealand and then he went to New York. It's very much exposing himself to English speaking environments. He's very interested in improving his accent. For him, it's a sense of intrinsic motivation. It's a sense of enjoyment that comes from the insides rather than feeling like I have to. And so to be completely honest, he's never really pushed me to speak French at home either because he enjoys speaking English. Now, I wish that my French was at his level of English. That's something that comes through being so dedicated and persistent and consistent, and I get that, and maybe it is important for me to get there, but for the moment it doesn't feel like a life priority. And I guess that's my final point, is that I kind of know it's coming. It will come. It's a marathon, not a sprint for me. I don't need to rush it, and I will enjoy it more if I don't rush it. I'm going to spend significant chunks of my life in France. We're already planning about going back for a few months, and hopefully one day we'll be able to live between the two countries very, very fluidly. Also, if we have kids one day, I know that the research says that I should speak to them in English and Neil should speak to them in French. And so I'm going to hear him speaking French all day. And so I'll be exposed to that too. So I guess that's the point of it all. Maybe it's just that I'm not in any big rush. I would love to hear your opinions on this. I would love to hear any advice you have for me and how to integrate it more in my life. You know, maybe we could do weekends in French or something like that, just to make sure that my level is improving without it feeling like a big to-do. Are you in, or have you ever been in a multicultural relationship before? I would love to hear about it, how you navigated this decision over which language to speak at home. And have you ever made the switch? Have you ever been just like me for years in one language and then completely switched to the other? Let me know down below. I will definitely be reading those and checking all of those out. I love hearing from you. And until next week on the Not Even Frenchy YouTube channel, I will say have a beautiful week ahead and à bientôt!